This robot can stay underwater and live at the bottom of your pool for a week, and it makes sure that you never have to clean the pool for weeks on end. It's the Scuba S1 Pro from Aiper, and it's one robot closer to my dream of a whole household full of robot servants that can do everything and every single one of my chores. Now, you can't deny that robots are quickly changing the way that we live, and will continue to do so as they get more and more advanced and as we introduce them into new areas which will make our daily lives easier. One of my favourite gadgets in the world are robot vacuum cleaners. Now, originally, I was a skeptic, but I'm now one of their biggest promoters of this technology, but it has its limitations and it can't do everything. There are models, obviously, that go some way in challenging that notion, such as the S10 by SwitchBot, which can also do things like empty dehumidifiers and refill humidifiers. But today I want to take a look at another robot that can clean, just this time it's going to be cleaning a pool. So let's go and give this a go.
So here I am in my pool, and look at it, look how well it's doing. Now I realise this is about as much pool as 99% of the British population probably has. But it might work in something like this, but I guess for those of you that are fortunate enough to have a pool, we should probably go and take a look at an actual proper pool with it. Come on. This might be a bit of a niche product, but it's still interesting and is going to save you an absolute boatload of money if you do have a pool, or are fortunate enough to have one more than a paddling pool anyway. But how does it work? So all you do is hold this button here until you hear a beep like that, and then throw it in. And that's it, you're done. It will sink to the bottom and start cleaning your pool. That is how simple it is. And if you couldn't tell, I've gained a bit of weight since I last wore this wetsuit. But I'm not going in there without one because it's too bloody cold. I mean, we're in the UK. So let's go have a look.
Now, the moment you throw it into the pool when it's on, it'll sense it's been put in water and it starts going as soon as it gets to the floor. And for my floor, I thought I'd give it a bit of a challenge and use a pool that's not been fully cleaned or maintained for a little while, just to see how well it performs on a pool that isn't brand new, sparkly and clean. Now, the Scuba S1 Pro is most noticeable for the fact it's built like a tank with its two huge tracks which allows it to drive in the pool. And as it moves along, the sweepers on the front spin around. And actually, there's two of them, one on the front and one on the back. And as it moves along the pool, it scrubs the floor, dislodging any gunk buildup at the same time. These sweepers consist of a ton of small silicone wipers with a very similar appearance to something you'd expect to see at an automated car wash. But these two large silicone brushes sweep debris into a large filter tank inside the main compartment of the robot, and is designed to be large enough to pick up all sorts of debris whilst letting water flow through freely. There's a secondary further filter which helps get rid of even the most fine particles whilst it pulls the water through its body, which is pretty cool. Now, it navigates around the pool using 4 infrared sensors for navigation and obstacle avoidance. Thing is though, this just doesn't navigate around the base of your pool. There's a reason it has what can only be described as treads of a tank, and that's because it can also climb the walls of your pool too. Now, when this gets to the edge, it takes a second to pull itself around a bend and then begins climbing, scrubbing the sides of your pool to remove the build-up. This is a super handy feature and gives the ability for full pool cleaning for this robot. It'll even navigate its way around and up steps to ensure they get a good scrub too. Now, this is cool and all, but when it gets to the very top of the water, it does something even more special. It almost pulls itself out of the pool with embarrassingly more grace than me, and then sits with its top brush around 5 centimeters above the waterline, scrubbing all the muck and grime, moving sideways for a few seconds before driving itself back down to the bottom, further along the pool, and moving across to the next section. This is the first model that can actually move itself along the waterline whilst scrubbing, and something which differs from other models and makes this an absolute killer robot for cleaning. This might seem inconsequential, but it's actually a really important part of the overall experience, because the waterline is typically where you'll find the most amount of dirt and grime and gunk buildup. So this feature is an absolute game changer. So now when you throw it in, it will methodically clean the entire sides of the pool first and then clean the bottom of the pool. And once this is done, it then drives itself to the edge of the pool and waits there for you to hock it out for emptying the basket and recharging. And this is what it collected on just one run of the cleaner in that pool. A hell of a lot of dirt, pine needles, grime, and even some kind of bug grub of some descript, which was gross. But I thought it did a really great job for the first time around this pool. And actually, if you look at the before and after in the time lapse, you can see a big difference in the colour of the bottom and the walls in the pool. It's not 100% perfect, no, but chuck it back in, send it round again a few more times, and you'd be absolutely laughing. I mean, I really did give it a challenge here. None of these pristine pools that you'll see other people testing it in. And despite the odds, I'll give it a thumbs up for its performance. Incidentally, I'm really impressed with the size of the basket which this has, which is 5 litres. It means that it can pick a hell of a lot up before you have to empty it, which is especially important when I tell you my favourite cleaning mode this has. Now, there's a few modes that you can actually set this in if you didn't want to do everything in the same cycle. You can press any of the 4 buttons on the outer ring on the top to change its mode between all in one clean, just floors, just waterline, or perhaps my favourite mode, which is the eco mode. Turn this on, chuck it in the pool, and it's designed now there to stay at the bottom of your pool, turning on and cleaning the bottom of the pool every 48 hours until it runs out of battery. This is by far my favourite mode, and although the sides won't necessarily get cleaned and scrubbed, it does give you a better, more intervention-free experience with this robot, and that's something that I'm always looking for when it comes to robots. The less messing and faffing around I have to do, the better. And this eco mode gives it some extra brownie points for that fact. Now, you can also control certain functions through the app too, rather than using the buttons on the top. Although I'd point out that you can't use the app once it's going, because of course connectivity disappears into the abyss when it's underwater. But the app lets you do largely the same as the buttons, change it between the modes, plus the additional option of walls only mode, along with checking the cleaning records and the consumables lifespan. Now, with this robot, there's not a great deal to replace, just the brushes and the filter. And with that, I'll say now, there doesn't feel like a lot that could go wrong with this device. There's not much to it at all. It's very open, it's very large, simplistic, well built, and feels like it'll live for a long time. And actually the appearance is really cool. It looks proper futuristic. And this grey paint on here has this kind of gold flecking that looks proper nice. It's a really, really nice colour scheme, and I've got to commend Aiper for that. But I can't say for certain that it will live for a long time. But there are telltale signs, such as the inclusion of brushless motors, which means that its lifespan will exceed a lot of other similar devices that don't have brushless motors. And if there was an absolute worst case scenario, which is highly unlikely, but hypothesizing here that it stops working after 2 years of use, I wouldn't actually be that bothered, because by that point it will have completely paid for itself and then some. I mean, it's very, very unlikely to have broken in 2 years, but let's just look at the worst case scenario and your dog decides to eat it. I don't know how big your dog will have to be, but let's just say your dog eats it in 2 years' time. Bear with me with this calculation. Its RRP is $1,200, although it was down to a discounted rate of $879 when I checked during this review. But it's always worth checking out the price in the link below to see what this is currently at. Now, when I saw the price originally, my gut reaction was that it was possibly a bit steep given how much of a niche product it is. But then I was looking at it from the wrong angle. I decided instead to look at it from the angle of a pool owner. Now, I had no idea how much it actually costs to get a pool cleaned, so I did some digging. And according to most sources, it's recommended that you clean your pool every single week. But let's face it, no one has time for that. So either you have a dirty pool or you are sensible and hire someone to clean your pool for you. And apparently, on average, it costs around £100 to get your pool cleaned, which seems a bit steep. I don't set the price, but let's just say you got it cleaned only once every other week and only during the summer season in the UK. That would set you back around £600 for an entire season, which is nearly the entire cost of the S1 Pro on the discount. So that's it. It's pretty much paid for itself in the first year. And that's even in the UK. If you live in a warmer climate and have a pool where you can use it for a much longer season, it'll start saving you money within that first year. But even if not, use it a second year and you'll have made a profit from this purchase. Obviously, my calculations are based on a few reasonable assumptions, but I think that because of this fact, it's almost a no-brainer. I am, of course, under no disillusionment that it can completely replace a regular clean from a hired pool cleaning man in spandex, but it's okay because even if it means that you only have to have him come out once or twice a season, it's still an absolutely incredible money-saving product. Now, aside from the lack of scantily clad spandex wearing pool cleaners, there are a few other considerations to make with the Scuba S1 Pro. And the first is that it's not completely intervention-free. For starters, you still have to charge it manually. Perhaps my biggest gripe with the entire experience is that it doesn't charge itself at a base station like robot vacuum cleaners or robot lawnmowers, for example. Now, I appreciate that it's probably much harder to come up with a charging solution. I mean, you can't just have an AC cord dangling into your pool. That would be shocking. So it would have to crawl its way out of the pool, dry itself, and then find its way to a charger a suitable distance away from the pool, which would be no small engineering feat, especially considering that as soon as it gets above the waterline, it would either need to suction itself to the wall or use some kind of grab arm to grab onto the edge of the pool and pull itself out. It's not the be-all and end-all, of course, especially with the eco mode I mentioned earlier. It just means that when it's time to charge, you'll need to retrieve it using the hook which Aiper supply you with and plug it in via the connector at the very, very back. Now, I guess on the other hand, you do still need to empty the filtration basket and rinse the microparticle filter too, so you'll be taking it out anyway to do that. So it's no skin off my nose to charge it at the same time, I guess. But the last consideration is that it's not an all-in-one cleaner because there's still one thing it can't clean, and that's the surface of the water. Now, obviously, it would be impossible for it to do this because it's designed to be weighty enough to stick to the floor inside so it can wipe all the scum off. But because of this, all the floating bugs, leaves and other detritus doesn't get cleaned along with some of the scum that it kicks up and drives around the pool. But most people have a filtration system, which goes a long way in aiding the S1 Pro to clean your pool wholly, but even that won't get rid of everything. So it's a good thing that Aiper don't just make this device, they make a whole suite of tech for your pool. And another device that they have is the Surfer S1, a solar-powered machine that glides around the surface and skims the top of your pool, which I think is awesome. And we might check that out next. But if one day they could make a model that could do both, that would make me a happy boy indeed. But am I happy with this device regardless? Do I think it's cool? Absolutely. It's one of those gadgets like solar panels that have an initial high output in terms of money. No one can deny that. But if you have the foresight here, your pockets will absolutely thank you. And it's another robot taking on another chore. So for that, this device absolutely gets my thumbs up. What do you think? Do you have a pool? Do you like the fact that robots are slowly taking over everything, or are you planning on building a time machine to stop the machines before they take over the world? Let us know what you think of the Scuba S1 Pro in the comments below, and if you enjoyed today's episode, hit that thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you guys back for another episode of STU'S Reviews soon.